For centuries, sailors have insisted that within the ocean's depths, there lurks an enormous and powerful sea monster. With tentacles that can down a ship and a hungry beak ready to consume seamen by the dozen, is there truly an unknown beast lurking in our waters? Or is it merely an unbelievably real sea creature made famous by sailors' tall tales? This week's episode is The Kraken. Sinisterhood. 300 episodes in, you know I'm about to say seamen in that intro, baby. Shaking your head. Shaking your head.
You said consume semen by the dozen is actually what happened.
Indeed, it is.
We finally made it. We have done it. And what a better thing to release than the Kraken on our 300th episode.
We need to unleash our true power, and that's the power of summoning this sea monster. Well, we've been having the Kraken in our back pocket for a while because it was part of our vote on a possible future topic a while back, but then your kids are both big Kraken fans. So
they love the Kraken. Yeah, Simon especially is obsessed with sea creatures, and the little movie Teenage Kraken that came out that is so cute. He's watched it. They both have a ton of times. So they're very familiar with it. And we got to do research with them, which was very fun, always fun. Went through a lot of different books. Simon, as if you watched on YouTube, showed the monstrous the lore, gore, and science behind your favorite monsters, because that's what I'm trying to get is the science behind my monsters.
It was fun getting that at the Dallas Public Library because I'm a childless adult in the children's section that I'm like, I need a book for research. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah. That's the magic of a librarian that no one's ever like, in the kids section, they're like, oh, for sure. Yeah, it's right here. This book's right here. But it has the science of werewolves, vampires, Godzilla, King Kong, and now the Kraken that we were able to quote in. We're quoting it in the episode because that's where Ella found some facts as well.
Oh, yeah. Got a lot of great facts. And we might have to add some of the vampire and werewolf facts into our full moon energy show.
Yeah, we do. If you have not been, we do have, of course, if you can't have a night with the full moon without vampires and werewolves, there is obviously an element to the show. And thank you to everybody in Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Toronto who just came out to those shows and made them so very much fun while we were traveling next week. Man, what a hoot. And I just was like, oh God, we're about to leave again in like 2 weeks. And we're going to be in Kansas City and Oklahoma City on August 6th and August 7th.
If you haven't seen the show, you're missing out. We've got everything that you love about the podcast, but it's all around the moon. We talk about cryptids that you can't even begin to wrap your head around. The moon and what it does to us, witchy stuff, sinister, there's true crime, what really happened during the Apollo missions, a lot of conspiracy theory stuff. So come on out. If you have seen it, we've added a ton of new stuff. We're about to change up even more. And literally after this monstrous book and some other things we learned while on tour this last week, we got to stop into the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic and learned a lot of cool new witchy moon stuff, which we got to add in now.
Yeah, it's in Cleveland, actually, and it's just outside of, like, it's right in downtown, and it's like a unassuming storefront that literally, much like a magical place, you go behind it, and there's so much more that lurks behind the door, but also moon-related. So, yeah, come on out to Full Moon Energy. We'll be in Kansas City August 6th, Oklahoma City August 7th, then we're going to San Diego, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Dallas on October 17th. So for all those details, dates, times, venues, and more, visit sinisterhood.com/live shows.
Well, for now, I'm Christy.
I'm Heather.
And let's get into it.
I was hoping you were going to say, let's get Kraken. But
oh, okay. I'll start over.
It's fine.
Well, for now, I'm Christy.
I'm Heather.
And let's get Kraken.
Thank you.
We're going to leave that in. We'll just leave that in. That we had to, she wanted me to cut it, and then we're just leaving it in. So you guys get a little behind the scenes. Since the dawn of maritime travel, sailors have exchanged tales of enormous sea beasts lurking beneath the ocean's depths. What we would call a squid or octopus had a single name in ancient times, the Kraken. Early stories about a giant, multi-tentacled creature first appeared in the area around Norway. In 1180 AD, Norse sagas described a sea creature known as
Hafgufa.
which translates to sea mist, so named because the monster was incredibly elusive.
I think about back in the day like that when, even hundreds of years ago, not necessarily thousands of years like this, but where you would just have to go off of someone's opinion of like what happened. Like I saw something,
like
I
your
swear.
opinion, man.
It's just like your opinion. Just your first person account of what happened. And if you're already a sailor telling tall tales, it has to really fucking suck if you've lied about a couple things in your life and then you really do see a big fucking squid and you're like, no, man, you don't understand. They're like, he always says stuff like that. You're like, no.
You're like, no, but
this
this time it's for real. And that's why we have the boy who cried wolf tale.
Mm-hmm. The boy who cried
sailor
Kraken.
who cried, I was going to say the sailor who cried Kraken. That's a children's book I'm going to write.
But it teaches you a lesson. Just stick to the facts.
Norway's ruler at the time, King Severa, warned his people of this huge monster lurking in the waters off the coasts of Norway, Greenland, and Iceland, capable of bringing down entire ships in its grasp. Soon, sailors began to refer to the sea beast as the Kraken, a word derived from the Old Norse term krake, meaning twisted or curled.
Which is appropriate. It just looks like a big sea of snakes coming up out of the water.
Yeah, no. And if you can't quite see like its body beneath and then it's just a bunch of arms up above and you're just in the middle of water, every way you can see is water, I'd be convinced that something was going to drive me down to the depths. That was it for me.
Fully terrifying. And you have no engine to just drive away. You're like, well, hoist the sails and hope something takes us away.
That isn't this thing.
Yeah.
We need a strong wind. As the expansion of trade began ramping up, more fishermen began taking to the high seas. With more eyes on the water, more monster sightings began to circulate. Indeed, sailors were so frightful of the possibility of encountering the Kraken, they began noting the sightings on maps. One of the earliest maps to depict sea monsters was the Carta Marina, published by Olaus Magnus in 1523. Alongside the sea pig, a 72-foot-long scaly ocean monster with a swine's head that Magnus also drew a diagram of in his book, Magnus warned sailors of the Kraken, writing,
Their forms are horrible, their heads square, all set with prickles, and they have sharp horns round about, like a tree rooted up by the roots. The eye is red and fiery colored, which, in the dark night, appears to fishermen afar off under waters as a burning fire. One of these sea monsters will drown easily many great ships provided with many strong mariners.
Well, that'd keep me off the ocean.
Right? I like that you think I went out there and saw some shit. I got to write this down and draw these pictures because people need to know this is a public service.
Else? You don't have a phone. You can just snap a pic of it. You got to draw it from memory too.
Otherwise, the sea pig.
You're relying on somebody's memory to draw that sea pig.
Yeah, which it does. If you look at his sketch of it, it sort of looks like a crocodile with like a pig head. Like a boar, more like a boar head.
Maybe it's out there. There's 95% of the oceans haven't been explored, so I'm not saying there's not a sea pig out there.
It's waiting.
Irish sailors in October of 1673 encountered something strange in the waters off the coast of Dublin in Dingle Bay. James Stewart was riding along the shore on horseback when a monster reared its head, or heads, toward him. Stewart later described the monster as having
2 heads and 10 horns. Upon 8 of the 10 horns, about 800 buttons. In each of them, a set of teeth.
The monster's body was bigger than a horse, measuring 19 feet long, with the horns, or tentacles, included. Stewart described 2
very large eyes,
as well as
a wonderful, strange mouth with 2 tongues in it.
Oh,
that's something you don't forget. He's just like, stop the horse. What mouth do I see? They're like, it has arms and 8 horns on its head. There's a set of teeth. He's like, but the mouth has 2 tongues.
Everybody loved to just go on and on about the mouths of cryptids and monsters back in the day. talk about this in the tour show too.
Sometimes scientists get distracted by things and they get too excited.
They're
And I
humans
think
just like us.
you're riding along Dingle Bay bareback on your horse. All of a sudden, a good-looking mouth stops you. Yeah, I'm surprised Stewart didn't fly off.
Now, the 800 buttons with the set of teeth in each of them, no matter the mouth, that might do me in.
Yeah, when we were reading that monstrous book yesterday with Ella, and she's like, and then there are tentacles, and then there's teeth inside. I think we were all like, ugh.
Hey. Yeah. No.
There's something about it's one thing for it to suck on you like an octopus, which I find very scary. And I saw some guy in the park the other day with no shirt on with the dots on his back where he had been cupped. He's clearly partaking in cupping. I was like, did octopus got a hold of you? That's weird enough. But to think that it would go and also chomp once it's sucked on you. Mm-mm.
And they have taste buds, which I learned. So it's not just teeth, so it's taste buds. So they said if an octopus or squid like wraps its tentacles around you, it's not just like seeing what you are, it's seeing how you taste to see if it wants to go any further.
Has to decide if it wants to take a bite. Oh no, we're the sample. We're the 31 flavors.
Wait, truly, yes. In 1734, a Danish-Norwegian missionary, Hans Egede, reported a sighting of a giant sea creature off the coast of Greenland, fueling the Kraken legend. Egede described seeing an enormous serpent near his ship that had a body as long as 4 ships. According to Egede, the monster's head reared up out of the waters higher than the ship's tallest mast. Owing to its reputation and repeated sightings by sailors, the Kraken found itself listed among other animal species in the Systema Naturae, published in 1735 by Carolus Linnaeus. He gave it a scientific name, Microcosmus marinus. However, owing to the lack of definitive proof, the Kraken was removed from later versions of the text. Linnaeus included it in a follow-up publication, calling it
a unique monster,
and clarifying that, despite reports, he had never seen one in the wild.
I feel like the whole story of the Kraken is fascinating insofar as it really shows how natural discoveries are developed and the reticence of the larger scientific community to immediately jump on and be like, oh, well, obviously the Kraken's real. And then we'll see shortly. However, the flip side is sometimes when there is evidence of something to go, might as well be a mermaid. And you're like, no, I saw it. I promise.
Truly. I mean, it, like you said, it's just people's firsthand accounts back then. I mean, if you're the first person to see a giant squid out in the ocean or a 600-pound fucking giant octopus in the Pacific Ocean, how do you come back from that?
It's one of those where you just go, not my business. And you go back to cleaning the fish or you're cutting or whatever. And I'm not going out there. I'm staying on this shore. Yeah,
and you just say, tally ho.
Yes. You hoist the sails with you. And you sail away and you just go, it's your part of the ocean, buddy. I'm going to let you have this one. I'm going to let you have it.
What a strange thing. I mean, even now to sail anywhere, I mean, knowing what we all know in 2024, we're like, God, who knows what's down here in the ocean. But back then it was really like, I mean, we don't know. This is a whole other world, which is still true, but they knew like so much less than we know now and didn't have the advantage of technology and the internet and all that stuff. So when you saw something like a giant squid and then you went back to try and warn people, you were either considered to be an unhinged person, or they're like, well, you got to take us to it. We got to fight it. And you're like, I just got off the water. I'm trying to get my sea legs under control. I'm not going back out there.
Yeah, I can't take the whoosh back and forth, man. I don't miss those boat days when I worked on that boat. You try to go to bed at night and your body just keeps moving like you're in the water. So yeah, you wouldn't get me back out there and be like, this could change your life. You could definitively prove that the Kraken is real. And it's just like, nah, I spent 9 months on that boat. I'm not going back. But you,
I'm
but you
fine.
are right. Especially nowadays, speaking of 9 months, that 9-month cruise that was going around the world that
Yeah.
was on TikTok and stuff, when they went down the southern tip of South America, and it's like Drake's Passage or whatever, and just like the churning waters. And this is like the most state-of-the-art, humongous cruise ship with every possible computer, people, everybody's got all the technology they could possibly have on board. I'm like, you are still at the mercy of the sea. Or
Yeah.
like on TikTok in the North Sea, when these like huge shipping vessels, it's a wave bigger than the whole ship.
Yeah.
And I just think I wouldn't do that now. And a helicopter could come and save me. And you
Yeah.
can't imagine back then you just were like, well, the ship cracked in half. I guess I'd drown out here.
Yeah, no, for real. Yeah, it just takes you down to the bottom. Do you think a lot of that was due in part to they didn't know the dangers?
I mean, it really was like this optimism they had of like, well, we'll go somewhere. And it's like, well, what
Yeah.
do the maps say? Well, it's just a little bit of water between, what we would call Asia and California nowadays. And it's like, that's so much water. Like
Yeah.
they would just set out sailing and you just like hope you have enough food or you can fish, you have traps or whatever. But yeah, I guess it was just, well, other people have gone off on boats and come back. So I guess that'll be
So I guess it happens. Yeah.
yeah, I guess they end up somewhere. But that was, of course, not everybody voluntarily got on some of the ships, but the ones that did were certainly, Sir Francis Drake types who were like, I can never be killed.
Explorers. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a certain thrill in a type of person that wants to go hunting a Kraken. Same type of people that would probably do it now. But back then, you were just in a giant wooden ship. There was much less protection.
Now you're James Cameron. So
Yeah. Yeah. Or Victor Vescovo. In 1752, Eric Pontoppidan, a Norwegian bishop, wrote The Natural History of Norway, a book providing detailed descriptions of the Kraken, contributing to its fearsome reputation. He called it
the largest sea monster in the world,
likening the length of the beast to that of several small islands. The bishop also claimed it had
arms as high and large as the masts of mid-sized vessels.
However, he didn't describe it as a violent animal. Rather, he warned of its ability to create enormous whirlpools that could suck ships down to the sea floor.
Still bad.
Still bad. Maybe we can give the Kraken a bit of grace, though, because he's just doing what he does down there.
Like,
and he's a big boy.
Excuse me, sorry.
We're sailing over him, and it just... Oopsies. It's an oopsies. He didn't mean to.
He's like, I turned on this new jam. I started spinning. I couldn't help it. And I am so sorry that I destroyed your entire crew.
But they would say that oftentimes they thought they were looking at like several islands, and then things would rise up from the water and they would realize they were not islands. They were creatures.
When we covered My Octopus Teacher on Docuary on Patreon, all the footage of the octopus is so beautiful and everything, but just scaling that up even 10 times its size is horrifying. And to think of it being 600 pounds, I just jump off and let the water take me. There's a fear. Those of you listening, someone probably has this fear. Email us, let me know, or comment it on social media. I want to know what it is, like the fear of tentacles. Like watching their tentacles move makes my chest feel like hollow. It makes me like want to leave my body. So that's what tells me, because I don't like when you're like, I'm afraid of bugs. I'm like, not really. But when I see that, I'm like, and that, to me, I think that means I have a fear of something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Octopus don't inherently spook me. I mean, a 600-pound one for sure would.
Yeah, big versions of anything.
It's also contextual. Where am I encountering this? Like in a safe place, like where I don't feel like I'm going to be attacked, or am I sailing out in the middle of the ocean?
Yeah. Or you snuck into a billionaire's like back room and you don't know what's in the giant tank, and you fall into the giant tank and then it turns out it's an octopus. Ace Ventura style.
Yeah, well.
That was a snake. That was a shark. But
that was a shark. I would rather fall in with an octopus than a shark, but I wouldn't want to fall in with either of them given the choice. I was trying to think of how I just fell into an octopus tank in a billionaire's back room.
Probably
what I
you were
was
going
doing
back
that
there.
I might trip and fall into it.
You were trying to see if it was the dolphin from the Miami Dolphins that had been kidnapped.
And then I fell into it. That
Yeah,
makes
and then you
sense.
fell in.
Yeah.
Oh,
At the time, most readers believed this was fiction. Without the ability to conduct robust underwater exploration, the possibility that an enormous squid existed was about as likely as a mermaid. Art depicting the Kraken, like Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem published in 1830, contributed to its legendary status. He described it as having giant arms and lurking on the sea floor, waiting for sailors to pass by and become entangled in its grasp.
Alfred Lord Tennyson just dropping bars on the Kraken, freaking people out.
Definitive evidence aside, beginning in the 1800s, early scientists began to speculate that the legends of the Kraken may be based on real creatures. In 1857, Danish zoologist Japetus Steenstrup was the first person to make a scientific case for the Kraken. He called the animal
Architeuthis dux,
or giant squid. At a lecture at the Society of Scandinavian Naturalists, Steenstrup recounted documented cases of beached giant squids dating back to 1639 in Iceland, as well as a recovered beak as evidence for his finding.
Anytime a discovery like this is made, it is oftentimes one real obsessed person, and that is Japetus Steenstrup is like, I'll prove that they exist. I'll collect every single possible listing that anybody maybe reported, and I'm going to put it all in one big paper, and then I'll fucking show you. Here's a beak. What do you call this? And it is wild when you have something that looks like a bird beak that's like huge, and you're like, this came from a sea creature.
Yeah.
No.
What? And they're like, well, this came from the sky. And you're like, did it? Or did everything come from the ocean? And so it makes sense that like some shit just stayed down there and birds were once sea creatures and some of them stayed.
He's like, some of them are squishy underwater. Some of them feathered in the air. Beaks the same.
Beaks are the same.
Beaks are the same.
Steenstrup wasn't alone in wanting to prove the Kraken was real. In 1861, a French gunboat crew attempted to catch a Kraken, in reality, a giant squid, in the Canary Islands. While they were unsuccessful, they returned with tales of an enormous beast, corroborating Steenstrup's finding. However, some scientists remained skeptical. In a speech that year at the French Academy of Scientists, one expert argued that the existence of giant sea creatures like the squid
amounted to a contradiction of the great laws of harmony and equilibrium which have sovereign rule over living nature.
It took less than a decade for the biggest skeptics to be proven wrong.
That French gunboat had they did Texas style, baby. They lassoed it with a noose. They try to get a rope. They try to lasso it, and they try to hoist
it because
yeah,
I don't.
It hurt
I don't
it hurt
want
it.
them. Like, here's the thing: I don't want to encounter one of these. But if I did, I wouldn't. My first thought would not be to kill it because
Let me get it. Yeah.
some things and shouldn't. I mean, the argument can be made, shouldn't this be said of all living things? But some things are just off limits. They're too big. They're you know what I mean? Like, just let them go, let them be. They exist in a world that isn't ours, and that's what's magical and mysterious about them. We don't need to kill it and take it to study it for our own thing.
We should ask ourselves why we have that feeling of like, I want to mount this head on my wall and not like, I want to look at it and then let it swim away and do its own thing. That weird need for mastery and ownership that's great. I only laugh because I was like, it's ridiculous. Like, what are you doing? You're trying to lasso it's slippery as fuck. Like it barely works on a loose steer that got loose from your farm that you need to get back, much less a slippery thing that's essentially kind of shaped like, I don't know, summer sausage. You know, it's not like it's got a lot of like edges for you to get the rope around.
No.
Ridiculous. But it swam away and it was, I think they maybe got a little tiny piece of a tail. They didn't really even get that much of it. So I was like, good for you, Kraken. 1
Good
for the
you.
Kraken, 0 for the French gunboat crew.
I would say 1,000 for the Kraken, 0 for everybody. The Kraken's batting 1,000.
Yeah, undefeated.
When you think about it, undefeated,
Truly.
never discovered.
The Kraken's taking dubs, man.
In addition to curious scientists, authors like Victor Hugo and Jules Verne found themselves captivated by legends of a huge threatening presence at sea, ready to take down ships. In 1866, Hugo's Toilers of the Sea describes an octopus attacking a ship.
Glutinous masses endowed with a malignant will, what ancients call the Kraken.
He claimed the beast would drown swimmers, sink ships, and like to drink blood. Hugo warned that the quick-swimming cephalopods were
phantoms as much as monsters. They are proved and yet improbable.
Fuck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want somebody to say that about me one day. You're
Christy Wallace.
Yet improbable.
Proved yet improbable. That's my presidential campaign slogan. Proved yet improbable. But yeah, if you're writing any sort of a novel back then about the ocean, it was a pretty easy thing to strike fear into the hearts of people by being like, and then its tentacles took the whole fucking ship down, because it was just that well-known, like, you can't go too out in the ocean darkness late at night because the Kraken will awaken.
No, for real. It's easy to attribute like scary or evil to things that we don't understand or that are a mystery, which oftentimes can be the case. But it's interesting that that's where the human mind goes first. It's not like maybe there's just, a wonderful world of Krakens down there and they all get along and they're all super helpful and they love each other. Instead, they're like these beasts that are out to get us. It's very, like you said, why do you need to mount something on your wall? Why is it this us against them hunting mentality? And I think it goes back to just evolution.
Yeah, and we don't all need to go out and be like Uncle Jimbo hunting the scuttlebutt and being like, it's coming right for us. And then it's not coming right for you. It's just sitting there. But yeah, that's a good point, that the depiction of stuff too, I think, has an impact on how people consider it. When you have Victor Hugo, I believe it was Victor Hugo, or perhaps be this next person we're going to talk about, but I think it was Hugo, because he called them monsters and said they were glutinous masses endowed with a malignant will. Fucking hated octopuses, that Victor Hugo guy. So whatever that fear is that I have, I think he had it turned up to about 11, because he went on about how they're heinous beasts and they're gross. And I'm like, come on, man, just because you're afraid of them doesn't mean you got to go drag their name in your literature and make other people afraid of them, and thusly make them a target for hunters.
Well, now would be a perfect time for me to consult my book, which again is a children's book, but I will say it is
good.
Has so much good information that I brought out the dinosaur book the other night to show you, because I was like, I've learned some things, and it was The Dinosaur Rap is the name of this book. It was the children's book.
New shit has come to light.
I learned so much from reading my kids' books that I probably learned at some point, but to like rehear it is a different thing. But just to stand up for the octopus for a minute and what incredible creatures they are. Here is a page that says how to tell if you're about to be eaten by a giant octopus. So now we'll all know if we're in danger of this. So when you're out in the ocean, it raises its mantle. It will raise the bulbous part of its head called a mantle above its eyes, which is kind of like raising your eyebrows, like, we about to do this?
You want to fuck with me?
We going, bitch?
And if you say, no, I'm good, then the octopus will back down. But if you're like, yeah, I'm going, where you going? Then what does it do?
Well, then it gets large. An angry octopus will spread itself out and lengthen to its full height.
You got to get long before you go.
Or if it feels threatened, it will get small. When threatened, a hungry octopus can squeeze into any shape bigger than its eyeball, so you have nowhere to hide.
So it could just go through all kinds of holes and tunnels and anywhere. You can't.
Like the documentary. No, they can camouflage themselves. They can make themselves look like rocks and shit. They'll cover themselves in seashells and stuff to blend into the ocean floor. I have what I think is a pretty solid theory that aliens are octopuses, or if you want to say octopuses are aliens / so are giant squids, because I don't understand how they have 3 hearts. Explain that one to me.
I cannot.
They communicate with light. They use chromatophores, which are light-reflecting skin cells that change colors and flash patterns. Oh, you mean like an alien would need to communicate underwater from far distances, flashing lights?
Or you can camouflage yourself if you had like a human coming at you to attack. You just like hide against the wall. Aliens walking among us would do that so that they could be able to hide.
Do you think aliens walking among us have a sharp bird-like beak that is about the size of your hand? This is a giant squid.
It's okay for a squid to have that, but I hope aliens walking among us don't have that.
I do
don't
too.
want to get chomped. As big as your hand.
Blue?
Honestly, I envisioned that they did.
Aliens?
Yeah.
Or squids?
I figured both, but I figured aliens, it would probably be like a bluish, greenish color. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just from sci-fi.
Well, giant squids bleed blue, as
Blue
do
blood
I
rich.
this election race. So, much like a giant squid, I am bleeding blue.
I'm ready.
And they can grow their arms back if you chop them off. So, joke's on
Like
you,
a hydra.
sailors that think you got it. You didn't.
Like, I got your arm, and it's like this arm, and then it grows back, and they're like, ah! And then it really is like a horror movie. That's what this one guy, Richard Ellis, who's wrote a bunch of books about giant squids and stuff. He said directors make horror movies about like giant ants and bugs and stuff, but they don't have to exaggerate the anything about the Architeuthis. It is a monster on its own, and I'm like, fuck yeah, it is.
Yeah. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne was published in 1869. Verne describes it only as
Poulpe.
the French word for octopus. The monster attacks Captain Nemo's submarine, the Nautilus. Verne wrote of the Kraken's violent capacity, claiming it
Could entangle a ship of 5,000 tons and bury it in the abyss of the ocean.
Well, I read that might be possible if you broke up the ship into a lot of pieces, but because of the density of the ship versus the Kraken, which would be more buoyant, it would be very hard for a Kraken to pull a boat underwater, much like if you were wearing a life jacket and you were trying to pull someone down that wasn't wearing a life jacket underwater, that would be difficult to do.
Interesting. So maybe the Kraken has to smash the ship in half or break holes in it so then it sinks. And you can't just tug it down. You got to chomp it. Like one bite at a time. How does the Kraken sink a ship? One bite at a time.
More proof of the Kraken would finally come on October 26, 1873. A fisherman named Theophilus Pico and his son were on a boat near Great Bell Island in Newfoundland, Canada. From a distance, the two men saw a great beast near a cliffside. They sailed nearer and saw an enormous cephalopod-like creature in the water. According to a letter from the time, Pico
struck at it with an oar or boat hook.
This was a mistake. After hitting it,
the creature's fury seemed to be aroused, and it struck at the bottom of the boat with its beak, and immediately afterward threw its monstrous tentacles over the boat, which probably it might have dragged to the bottom, had not Theophilus, with great presence of mind, severed one or more of the tentacles with his axe.
Well, don't hit it with an oar.
I was like, lesson learned.
You fucked around and found out with this Kraken.
Don't, if you see a tentacle come up, just a little tap, like, hey, buddy, wrong boat. Just a tap. Don't whack at it with a boat hook.
No. I saw that people, often claimed like whales would attack their boats and stuff, but really it's probably because they were just bumping into them.
Yeah, they just are like in the way, like, ow, you hit me. We've been swimming here for years. What are you? Yeah. You are very scratchy. I am a slick whale. This is wood. What is this wood? This come from a tree? We don't have trees.
Everybody gets tumped out and it sinks and the whale's to blame, but it's really like, where else can the whale go? The whale can't go anywhere else. We didn't have to go to the ocean.
That's a good point. The whale's like, I'm swimming here. Hey.
Hey, I'm trying to swim here.
I'm trying to swim here. But then he's got a bunch of people around and he's like, this was really peaceful a minute ago. There's a bunch of fucking people around and junk down here.
Yeah, buddy.
Bad
Hard
news.
relate. Yeah. The father and son sailed away with a 17-foot length of slimy tentacle on board with them. Pico took the piece of tentacle to the Geological Commission of Canada. The commission's experts determined that the tentacle's full length was 35 feet long, making the creature the men encountered a whopping 60 feet long and 5 to 10 feet wide.
That is huge. To only be you and your son and a little axe against it, you should have just swum away.
Well, I guess maybe they scared it off a bit by getting a piece of its tentacle, but to know after the fact that you were dealing with something 60 feet long and up to 10 feet wide.
It's so big.
It's hard for me to understand. I told you the other day, I was like, I need like guidelines to, like a banana for scale. Well, what did we learn? A school bus is what, like 20 something feet?
Yeah, it'd be like several, like 3 school buses ish almost. It's so big. It's so big.
It's interesting though that the tentacles, well, I guess if you're chopping off the tentacle from the source, that would be different. But tentacles and stuff that wash up on shore, they get longer after the squid or octopus dies. So it's actually not a very good measure, I mean, to a degree, of how big they were. But they do get way more stretched out after they die. So it looks like they were way bigger, but still, they're really big.
I was going to say when they go, well, I don't know, the tentacle had been cut off. So 17 feet, that's probably stretched out. So instead of 60 feet, it was probably only 40 feet long. That's still so big. It's so big.
So big. So very big. The first image of a so-called Kraken was captured by Reverend Moses Harvey of Newfoundland. In November of 1873, fishermen in nearby Logie Bay were met with enormous tentacles, around 24 feet in length, wrapped around the bow of their boat. A quick-thinking sailor grabbed a knife and hacked off a chunk of arms and tentacles along with a piece of mantle, the pocket of skin that covers a squid's body. Unsure what to do with it, the fisherman brought the severed pieces to Reverend Harvey, known in the area for his interest in nature, once describing himself as
crazy after all kinds of strange beasts and fishes.
According to the Canadian Broadcasting Company, Harvey paid the men $10 cash for their kill. He then laid it out and measured it for accuracy. After configuring a T-bar-shaped hanger over a portable bathtub, Harvey and a friend carried the squid to a photography studio in town and had its portrait made.
I'm not out there doing anything as important as this, but the way that I can relate to a person doing something catastrophically bizarre and being like, hang it, okay, get some metal and we can hang it over this bathtub and I can carry it. As long as we can get like 6 blocks to the photography, I can carry it. I can do this. And they're like, what, is that Reverend Harvey? Yeah, he's got a squid in the bathtub. And he's like, hang on, guys, I'm almost coming down there. But I love this guy because, again, it's one wacko who's like really obsessed with stuff, who's like, I'm gonna be the one to do it. Instead of going, oh, you brought me fish tentacles, throw them out. He's like, I'll get my tape measure. That's what you want.
If you want to be an explorer in the first, especially when everything's so new, you get to be the first to discover something. That's how you get your name on stuff.
That's why we're talking about the good reverend to this day, because of his photo, which we'll put up we'll put on our social media. Looks what it looks like, which is a T-bar hanging with some tentacles over a portable bathtub. It's like the most redneck, like, hang on, I'll hang it on the bathtub and take a picture of it.
Oh, and he would invite his friends over to look at it, and it was just decomposing for a long time.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're taking bathtubs and a stand-up thing where you're also hanging your squid, I don't know if hygiene is your number one concern.
Right? And everyone around's not going, kind of stinks in here. They're like, yeah, it just smells regular. This is how we all smell.
You're like, what? This just smells like the 1800s. Soon, news publishers around the world picked up on this story. The Kraken that Harvey captured measured 7 feet long. Its 8 arms were about 6 feet long, and its 2 tentacles were 24 feet long. Jenny Higgins, a writer with the Maritime History Archive at Memorial University in Canada, told the CBC,
the photo was seminal. It pushed scientists' understanding of giant squid ahead by leaps and bounds. And number one, it proved they were real. Man, this came out in 1873. I feel like every sailor that had ever said they saw a Kraken was like, "Give me a copy of that newspaper." And they're like, "I fucking told you. You see this? Do you see this?" And they're like, "Yes, we all saw the photo, Greg. Jesus Christ, calm down." He's like, "I'm going to put it on the mantle. I'm going to frame it above the photo of the family." And they're like, "We don't even have a photo of the family. That's like a weird daguerreotype. Like, fine, put the squid picture up. Whatever. It's like the side of our faces."
Like, go take a shower. Get that thing out of your bathtub and go shower. But it did prove they were real. So, I mean, had it not been for his antics, people would still be wondering.
Yep. Old Reverend.
In 1981, the movie Clash of the Titans introduced the Kraken as a monstrous foe kept behind a metal gate at the bottom of the sea. When it emerged on screen, its tentacles were capped off with human-like hands. Its face and body looked closer to the horror classic Creature from the Black Lagoon than a giant squid. Though the special effects were cheesy and of the time, the classic line evoking the beast cemented the Kraken's place in the pop culture cryptid pantheon, right alongside a similar ocean-bound monster, Godzilla.
That's kind of what it looks like in this movie. It just, you see hand, third hand, and it has hands. And I was like, is this a Kraken? Am I watching the right part of this movie?
I've never seen it, but that freaks me out.
Yeah.
Like it being a regular thing down there, a regular squid, but I don't want it to have human hands. That's too much.
It's a squid that also has hands? Why is that worse?
I hate it.
It's horrible. It's horrible. If you're not watching on YouTube, I'm doing weird titty honking with my hands, essentially. But it's what it was doing. It was like, I was grabbing onto stuff. That definitely could take down a ship, because if you go, well, with the tentacles, it couldn't really, the buoyancy. How about one hand on one side, one hand on the other, and it cracks it open like a walnut?
Yeah.
You're
and
done.
then just whoop, sucks them right both down to the bottom.
Yeah, it does. So
you think Godzilla and the Kraken are cool?
Yeah, dude. Man, we watched Godzilla -1, and with the amazing ocean moves that Godzilla could do, there's no way that he's not friends with the Kraken. Because, Godzilla could just, what were we in that book? It says Godzilla, the amount of time Godzilla can hold his breath underwater, unlimited minutes.
You're like, well, when something isn't real, you can just say whatever you want about it, and it's true.
But I think because, the Godzilla can move itself at different ocean depths and hide at certain depths and move. And then as we get closer to, we're going to hear whenever one of these bad boys is captured on film, it's kind of near the area where I think Godzilla might live. So I don't doubt that they're acquaintances at the very least. I don't know how often they hang out.
Well, my question when we were watching Godzilla -1, because I wasn't very familiar with Godzilla, is how did he stay afloat? Was he just treading water in the middle of the ocean? We all agreed he couldn't stand on the ocean floor where he was. Mm-hmm. So my new theory is the Kraken was using all of his little tentacles to boost his boy on up there.
He got a Kraken boost. He's like, I'm going to go fuck up some coastline today. What are you doing? And the Kraken's like, I got you, boo. It's like when you text me, you want to hang out? I'm like, let's fucking do this. Am I the Kraken lifting up your Godzilla? I think so.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'll be there. You just tell me. Roll
I'm going to go into
with
beast
my hands.
mode. Yeah, I didn't know my back could just turn into some kind of, when you get juiced up on a video game and then you go into super force mode, when that thing's back turned blue, it was go time.
If you see a giant lizard emanating radioactive light, run away. It's just good advice.
A decade later, in 1991, Peter Benchley, the same author who brought us the novel Jaws, wrote Beast. This thrilling novel centered on the hunt for a giant squid. Benchley drew on our terrifying fascination with the Kraken legend, albeit with his book's monster measuring over 100 feet long.
I guess you figure you have a hit with Jaws, you go back to the well or the water. Yeah.
In the early 2000s, the Kraken saw a resurgence as part of the Pirates of the Caribbean film franchise. Portrayed as the terrifying servant of Davy Jones, the Kraken is summoned using a giant hammer. As the Kraken sunk ships, Jones took the souls on board to staff his own vessel. The 2010 remake of Clash of the Titans reintroduced the Kraken to a new generation, this time with Liam Neeson delivering the famous line,
"Release the Kraken." He does, though,
It's
too.
his time.
He, like, looks over his shoulder and he's like, I practiced.
Oh, he did. He practiced a lot for that.
I hope he does. He's a good actor, surely. He's got a method.
Oh, yeah. I think he probably takes all of his, but he's also like super funny. But he's also very good. Yeah, I think he takes a serious approach to all of his roles. Appearances of the Kraken in modern movies and TV shows hasn't stopped those who believe they've encountered one. In 1984, Sean Ingham, a fisherman in Bermuda, found himself going through crab and shrimp traps at a lightning pace. On September 3rd of that year, Ingham tried pulling up a trap from nearly 3,000 feet below the surface when his ultra-strong line snapped. But that wasn't his only incident. Another trap was struck a few days later around the same depth. That trap felt to Ingham like it was being held down by something, almost dragged. Then, the unseen force began pulling on the line and eventually ended up dragging Ingham's 50-foot boat along with it. He managed to escape and report the encounter to the International Society of Cryptozoology, which published the incident in its newsletter.
I mean, it's one thing if you're a fisherman and you lose some traps here and there, but the first incident, that polyurethane line that he used is meant to withstand 600 pounds per square inch of force. And I was like, what does that even mean? It's a lot, though, of square. It's like so much. It's like not supposed to break. They're like industrial fishing traps that are not supposed to break. So if you say like, okay, buddy, well, did maybe you left the trap and you started to sail away and then the trap snapped, but you're just sitting stationary and it just gets yanked away from you. Fucking terrible. And then only days later, you're like, well, that's not going to happen again. And it's like, no, this time it's worse. It's going to drag your ass through the ocean. That is so, what is strong enough that can drag your boat?
Jaws.
That's it.
We learned that.
Beast.
Spielberg
Beast
showed
Jaws.
us.
Yeah.
So I guess the beast down there, but whatever it was, I don't want to encounter it. That's the thing. These are just how big people have seen.
Yes.
But we all need to understand that certainly doesn't mean those are the biggest.
That we haven't seen it all, truly. Yeah. And that's what some scientists that looked at this incident said. We don't doubt that this happened to this guy. We're saying it was probably a giant octopus because giant squid and colossal squid are predators and they like to chase fast-moving prey, whereas an octopus would be more likely to see a trap and be like, don't mind if I do, and just sort of go after what was already there. So I was like, regardless, I don't want an octopus so big that it's like, give me them shrimps and then it drags you away.
That is the danger, though, of a lot of fishermen stuff is when you're trying to catch fish and then you're in the territory of bigger fish that are trying to catch those same fish and you're kind of doing the work for them, or that smell of blood gets in the water, you kind of opened up a Pandora's box down there. You've opened up the Kraken's cage.
They're like, oh, you made this just for us? And you're like, actually, I was going to take it with me. They're like, no, you're not. And then they eat your shrimp out of the trap.
Mm-hmm. The science community rejoiced in September of 2005 when a living giant squid was finally captured on camera for the first time in its natural environment. Two scientists 600 miles off the southern coast of Tokyo, near the Ogasawara Islands, photographed a specimen at a depth of 3,000 feet. It measured 26 feet long and left behind an 18-foot length of tentacle. I'm sorry, it left it behind?
Well, yeah, they had a food trap down there and it got in the food trap. And it was, I think it just was like, fuck it. And it just left its tentacle behind. It was like, I'm done with you. I ate the food out of here. You got my picture. I'm leaving. And they're like, well, your tentacle's trapped. It's like, okay, well, so it's trapped. Bye. I'll make another one.
Yeah,
and it sailed away.
Dude. It's like that guy that had to cut his own arm off when he was rock climbing. Like sometimes you just got to do what you got to do and suffer the consequences after.
It's 127 hours, but it's just a squid that's like, they're taking my picture. They finally caught me on camera. But it's wild that it took to 2005 before we were able to see a living one. It wasn't just a carcass washed up on shore.
Right.
But you know, I'm like stoked for those scientists that were the ones to discover it because they're like, is this it? They're like, oh, it makes me so nervous of like take the picture, don't erase it. Don't accidentally, like I hate it when you you thought you were hitting film, but really it was filming nothing. And then when you went to think that you were going to film, you actually turned it off. So the thing you wanted to film isn't there. It's just you being like getting ready. Oh, I'm so happy for them that it worked out.
Like the other day when I was trying to film something and very gently you looked over and you said, "Are you meaning to film right now?" And then I realized I was just holding my phone up and had not hit record. So I looked real ridiculous. And I was like, yep, I was. So yeah, I relate to that.
I wasn't sure. I was like, "Are you lining up a shot?" No, I thought you would be sad later if you were like, "Where's all that footage?"
I would have. So much like these scientists, I would have been real bummed had it been deleted. But again, 2005, we finally see one of these. So what the fuck else is down there that we have never seen so much?
You can't.
So
Victor
much.
Vescovo, get down there, buddy. Stuff waiting.
But even like you get 1,000 Victor Vescovos down there in their little bubbles and stuff. You still aren't going to really. It's just impossible. We can't explore it all. We just can't. And so therefore we're never going to know at the deepest recesses of the ocean what's really going on.
I think you're right. That's the irony of that. Even if we were able to get, say, a sufficient amount of underwater drones, unmanned underwater drones that have cameras on them, whatever, their existence down there necessarily changes the environment they're in. So we never truly can observe the ocean as it is, because to see and take their pictures, we got to shine lights on them. Like we said in the Victor Vescovo show, we're like, this is 36,000 feet under the ocean. These animals have not had a flashlight in their face. What is happening? So you doing that, only the ones that are going to not be afraid of the light or that are around or whatever are going to be captured. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to if we could ever truly see what all's down there without altering the landscape, thus that we can't really observe it anyway. It's like the oceanographer's dilemma.
Yeah. And even if we could, because when they have photographed squids or octopus now, they have to use a red light, because apparently red light can't be detected at very deep levels of the ocean. So, which is one reason why the squid camouflage themselves in red, is so they're fucking just nothing to the prey, and then they just sneak up on them. But one of the scientists said, like, we had to figure out, like, with the camera, like, the noise probably scares them off, the light. So they had to make it really quiet, and they had to, like, put a red light, infrared light kind of around it almost. But even if we had all of that, like you said, it still alters it. But even if we found a way to not alter the landscape to where we would kind of view it in its natural habitat, it's too big to view all of that. Like, so we just shit hides places, or like, we can't see everything. So it's just impossible, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're trying that. I think we talked about it in the Atlantis episode. I think it's Seafloor 2030, that they're trying to at least get a map of the seafloor by then. And thinking about 2005 to now, like the leaps and bounds we've made, I can't even fathom, but what's going to have changed between now and 2030 or 2050. Like, it's really cool that we're exploring all this shit.
I love it.
We're going to find it.
Yeah. It's very exciting. Also, a lot of people's worst fears are going to come to light. They're like,
what, when you find out that aliens
are down there for real? It's like, yeah. And then the cruise industry just tanks, because nobody is willing to sail through Drake's Passage, which even on, like you said, the most strongest ship in the world, I don't want to be going through that thing.
No, I'm worried about getting cracked in half.
Yeah, crackened in half. Mm-hmm. In their observations, the scientists determined that the squid
appears to be a much more active predator than previously suspected, using its elongated feeding tentacles to strike and tangle prey.
Similar to a python enveloping its victims, the researchers said the squid's tentacles could coil into a ball to kill its prey.
And that was one of the big things of watching it actively as it was alive, instead of just having the washed up one. Because you're like, oh, well, it's tentacles. Maybe it just grabs things and puts it in its mouth. And it's like, oh, it's just like pythoning things. It is down there like squeezing the life out of shit and shoving it into its mouth. It's so much faster and stronger than we do.
Oh, yes. And not giving a fuck. Richard Ellis, squid expert and author of multiple books on the ocean, told the New York Times,
"This has been a mystery for 1,000 years. Nobody knew what they looked like in the wild. We only saw them dead. These images will open the door to more detailed study of their life."
2010's film Aquaman, starring Jason Momoa, featured a Kraken-adjacent beast called the Kraken, which serves as a protector of a powerful artifact. Unlike the Kraken, which attacks ships and sailors, Aquaman summons his monster to help fight the final battle and save the day. In 2023, DreamWorks released the animated film Ruby Gilman, Teenage Kraken. The title character is a shy teenager who discovers she's descended from a line of ancient krakens. Rather than a monster, Ruby and her kin are portrayed as protectors of the sea, lending a new, friendlier image to the once feared sea foe.
I think it's good. We got to rebrand it.
Oh, it's such a cute move. It's a very coming of age, but very, I wouldn't even say YA, younger than that, but it has a lot of very good messages of accepting yourself and when you feel like you don't fit in, how to fit in. But I will say there is a villain in this, and I'm not going to spoil it, but it's not who we all thought it was going to be. It's not the Kraken who we need to be worried about, turns out.
Tune in.
According to this.
No spoilers.
John Ablett, senior curator of mollusca for the National History Museum, explained how the stories of the Kraken became so widespread.
Many cultures around the world have a myth or legend about a tentacled beast bothering seamen or generally getting up to no good.
Like many scientists, Ablett believes the Kraken sightings are likely actual sea creatures that do exist, but have been misidentified by frightened seafarers.
Squid and octopus really are unusual animals. Their body plan isn't similar to anything else that we know of in the sea. They move quickly, and the way that their bodies, arms, and tentacles move seem to stimulate something in our fear of the unknown. I think the fact that they are such odd creatures, with some very large species being very rarely seen, make it very likely that they could be the starting points for the Kraken and other sea beast legends.
Well, there you have it. He said it triggers something in the fear of the unknown, the way their arms move around.
Where are you going? That's a good point. If you're walking forward and stationary, you're like walking forward, and I can kind of like a little bit assess which way you're going to go. But those tentacles are going every which way but loose.
You don't know where it's moving. You don't know if it's coming or going. I also would say this is just another reason they're aliens.
Further proof. They're like, they don't look like anything. We don't know.
No.
Didn't you say Simon's like there are animals and then there are sea creatures? And you're like, yeah, man, you're right. Split them up. They're
He
different
does like
things.
to split them up. They're just blobs, but they're smart as fuck. And they're also like can take down a ship or they're just, I respect them, but it's none of my business.
That guy said they are proved yet improbable. And that's what does it for us. Victor Hugo called it.
Yeah. One such creature is the giant squid, a dangerous predator with an average length of 33 feet, eyes the size of dinner plates, and tentacles lined with razor-sharp teeth. Giant squid can move both forwards and backwards through the water at speeds of up to 25 miles per hour, change colors to camouflage themselves from predators, and shoot blue-black ink from their rear ends, allowing them to escape dangerous situations. With their unusual and frightening appearance, it isn't unreasonable to see how a sailor in the 1800s would mistake such a creature for a man-eating monster. Yeah, something that's 33 feet with eyes the size of dinner plates coming at me, I'm going to think it's going to probably eat me too.
Truly. And when you think about speeds in water, I remember telling people when we would do the Sea Dog tours, they go like, how fast does the boat go? And I'm like, oh, it's like 20 miles an hour. And they were like, that's so slow. And I'm like, there's no resistance on water. It really does feel quite fast. So to be like, they can just shoot at you through the water at 25 miles an hour is real fucking fast. And
forward or backwards.
No, and their natural environment is like the deep, deep depths. So it makes sense that they were more rarely spotted. And so when they were, it was like, it was the biggest thing I've ever seen. It's like, well, I've never seen one. It's like, well, they're deep.
That's how fast like great whites can swim.
So fast.
Yeah. A fisherman in 1925 was the first to discover another type of squid, a colossal squid, when he removed the cephalopod from the stomach of a sperm whale. Since then, 8 more colossal squids have been discovered, 6 of them in the bellies of sperm whales, the only known ocean dweller that is large enough to consume a colossal squid, which can weigh over 1,000 pounds. Indeed, this was the size of one captured by fishermen in 2007 in the Ross Sea, Antarctica. Rather than keep the colossal squid for themselves, the fishermen handed it over to researchers at the Te Papa Museum in New Zealand. Here, this mysterious creature's anatomy can be further studied, with features such as deadly hooks that allow them to catch their prey, soccer ball-sized eyes, and beak-like jaws. It's no wonder they became the subject of legend.
Well, good on the fishermen for turning it over to the scientists. And yeah, the colossal squid is the largest invertebrate on Earth. And that's just, it's so eerie to think about something giant like a sperm whale or like a shark or whatever. But the physical structure of these makes it weirder somehow.
I thought a giant squid was bigger than a colossal squid.
Lengthwise, giant squids are longer. Colossal squids are fatter. And like by mass, they weigh more. They're thick bitches.
Still, some scientists believe the Kraken sightings are actually a third type of squid, known as the Humboldt squid. Squid expert Clyde Roper pointed out that giant and colossal squids are typically only seen at the surface of the ocean when they are in distress or dying. Those that have reported seeing the Kraken speak to its ferocity, often attacking the ship. For this to have happened, Roper argues that the squid must be healthy and vicious enough to attack humans. Averaging 100 pounds and 6 feet in length, the Humboldt squid is noticeably smaller than its cousins. However, don't let its size fool you. Always hungry, the Humboldt rises from its normal depth of 2,000 feet below the ocean's surface to feed. Once they reach the surface, the starving squids have been seen leaping from the water at speeds so fast they appear to be flying. For those unlucky enough to be attacked by one, be prepared to put up a fight. The bite force of a Humboldt squid has been compared to that of an African lion's, meaning their beak could easily bite through human bone.
This is like a situation of, would you rather have one 100-foot squid or 100 human-sized squids? And like, give me the 100-foot one, maybe?
Yeah,
I don't know.
always.
This seems overwhelming. A 6-foot, that's the size of a person.
Yeah.
That
it has
wants
a
to
fucking
bite you.
beak that can bite through your arm.
And red devil, they call them the Diablos Rojos, the red devils, and then they just swarm you while you're diving and you're attacked and bitten. I don't think they always do that, but it is freaky to think of something that can bite you as hard as a lion being able to jump up out of the water.
No, yeah. There were some fishermen that were watching another ship catch a 14-foot long shark. And they jumped in the water to film, sadly, the shark kind of underwater. Well, here come the Humboldts, baby. And they're like, bitch, if you're going to take this down, it's staying down here in the ocean with us. And just started tearing apart the shark. And they all just watched like, holy shit. And then one of them came over to one of the divers and started wrapping its tentacles around it. And like we said, they're not just checking you out. They're seeing if you taste good.
Like your next bitch.
And luckily it let him go and they swam off, but they could have taken him down if they'd wanted to.
Oh, yeah. Any of the Richard Ellis or Clyde Roper, and then I think Wendy Williams, not the host of the television show, but an author about a book called Kraken about squids and going out and researching squids. They were all of them talk about like thumping them on when you go to actually like cut one open and look at it, like thunk, and 100-pound 6-foot squid, as you know, like I said, even compared to a 60-footer or a 40-footer, that's still such a mass of meat and body that if it wrapped itself around you, I just don't know how I would react. I guess you just punch your way out, just try to fight it off. Don't go down there in the first place would be again, it's like, it's their domain. You shouldn't be down there.
No,
let them live.
They've said avoid the beak at all costs, because that's when things get real dicey. But the thing is, it's hard to tell what you're looking at, especially if you were already underwater. But everything's kind of jammed up in there. You don't know where the head, and it's a lot.
You got to add this to the Bermuda Triangle and quicksand and squid beaks, or things that I will not likely encounter, but that I'm going to think about a lot. But like, how do you, just driving down the street, like I got to put my turn signal on. How do you find the beak though? How do you know which part's the beak? I missed my turn.
Well, in the sperm whale, when they eat the squid, everything is just like, you know, a slurpy little milkshake for them because they don't have bones except the beak. Except that beak.
Gets the
then that
juice
beak
on it
gets caught in the digestive system, which we learned about. Then its digestive system starts to do its thing, and then it pukes it up, and ambergris is what is the result of that, which originally smells terrible. But then once it washes up to shore, apparently it smells kind of nice, and they're worth a fucking ton. It's illegal to pick it up on beaches in America because the sperm whales are endangered species. But we read that a boy found one like in the UK somewhere washed ashore. Was $50,000?
Yeah, $55,000. Yeah, because it can be processed to make fine French perfume. So if you find something a whale threw up and you can find a buyer for it, there's a sucker born every minute. So sell that whale barf to somebody who's like, I want to spray this on my throat. It smells so good. Like, what's that smell? Ambergris. Yeah, give it a nice name, because what it is sounds to me like a tonsil stone from a sperm whale.
It does. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Generally, octopuses are much smaller than their cephalopod cousins. However, a much larger species, like the giant octopus, can weigh up to 600 pounds. For seafarers sailing the high seas, witnessing a 600-pound octopus rise up from beneath the waves would feel like something straight out of a horror film. Like the giant and colossal squids, giant octopuses live in the deepest parts of the ocean, most of which is unexplored, meaning that it is unlikely humans have ever encountered the largest example of any of these sea creatures.
Which is a good point. I think the generally accepted largest arm span of a giant octopus is around 14 feet. I just feel like there's bigger ones down there. I can't prove it. I haven't seen it, but there's no way there's not. What do you think? It gets to 14 and goes, I'm good. If it's got unlimited space and enough food, it's going to stretch out.
I mean, a lot of things grow to the size of their tank. If you're in the ocean, just like you can hold your breath unlimited minutes if you're Godzilla, I would say you could expand to unlimited sizes.
Exactly. You can't tank me, baby. You're just in the bottom of the ocean, stretching out.
Tales of the Kraken say it was bigger than 50 feet long and could consume an entire ship. Although some cephalopods come in impressive sizes, they don't account for the legends of these super-sized beasts. According to the book Kraken, we have only measured about 500 giant squid throughout the course of human history. From 1180 AD to today, millions of giant squids and other cephalopods have lived in the ocean's depths. That means the 500 that we have cataloged is not a representative sample size for the entire species. With 95% of the ocean still unexplored, are there creatures even larger lurking undiscovered in its depths?
I think so.
I would say the answer is 100% yes.
Something lurking. You know there's something lurking.
Another, more phallic explanation went viral in early 2021. A thread on Twitter from IFL science writer James Felton read,
A surprising number of sea monster sightings can be explained by whale boners.
Felton wrote that large baleen whales have long, snake-like penises resembling cephalopod tentacles. When the whales are mating in pods, the males wait their turn by breaching the ocean's surface with their snake-like members, which can reach up to 1.8 meters or nearly 6 feet long. A pod of mating whales in low light and harsh sea conditions could resemble a giant beast with multiple long tentacles.
You just didn't know you were watching a whale orgy and you're like, look at the mighty sea beasts. And the whales are just doing the helicopter on the surface. No clue that people are watching. They're just like, what are you doing, Chuck? I'm airing it out, Dave. What's up? I'm waiting my turn. You're going to air it out? I'm going to air it out. They're all airing it out. Meanwhile, there's just sailors gripping the wheel being like, we got to get out of here, mateys. There's a Kraken. And they're like, well, it's about to get Kraken over here, Deborah.
Yeah, they're not paying attention to those sailors. They got... probably one female whale under there that is just
to take all the
fighting for her life. God damn. She's like, how many more of you are there? God. But this has also been explained for Nessie, I've seen too.
Yes, that's the other argument. I'm like, well, I don't think there's a whale in the Loch Ness, but when you look at them, and we'll post a picture for science on our Instagram, but you can see, one could see how these long, pink, pointy, they look like tentacles.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Even if it's a whale pee-pee, I mean, seeing that coming out of the water is... also crazy. I mean, I think tentacle might freak me out more for some reason, which I don't know what that says about me.
Well, I think because the tentacle there, you don't know. First of all, you don't know if there's hands at the end, Clash of the Titan style. But second of all, tentacles are for grabbing, sucking, and chomping. And the penis is for penetrating a lady whale vagina, which I don't have. So I think I'm safe.
Yeah.
So I think that's my thought process. Yeah, that's my thought process at least.
That's how we sleep at night.
Yes, exactly.
If we have discovered possible explanations, why does the mystery surrounding the Kraken persist? Similar to urban legends, tales of the Kraken serve as a symbol of the unknown and the dangers lurking beneath the sea. As more of the ocean is explored and discovered, we may well encounter what the New York Times described as
other creatures, perhaps even larger and stranger than the monstrous Architeuthis,
waiting for us in the dark waters. So what do we think?
Well, I think of the potential contenders that we've discussed, the giant octopus, I think, is probably out because I do think it's too small as far as, I mean, I think people have probably seen it and that contributed to the legend, but the most likely candidate I feel like is the giant squid because its natural habitat is in the area geographically, like where this has been seen, Norway, Iceland, things like that, whereas the other ones are more seen either in the Pacific Ocean or like further south. But even if it's not all giant squid, like someone in the Southern Ocean, someone near, Bermuda, Puerto Rico, whatever, sees something, feels something. There are large sea creatures, even if they're not 100 feet, something that has 15-foot wingspan is big to me. A 600-foot octopus, that's big to me. I don't know where you're from. Everything's bigger in Texas. Well, everything's even bigger in the ocean because there's no limits in the ocean. No limit. Ocean
no limits.
No limit.
Ocean. No limits.
No limits.
Truly, though. Who knows what's down there? I think the giant squid is up there, too. The sad thing is when the sailors, or maybe the good thing for the sailors, is when they were seeing him, they probably were in distress or dying because they don't really come to the surface unless that's happening. So at least they didn't have to worry about getting attacked because it probably had other things on its mind and it wasn't in the fighting mood.
That's a good point, too. If they're most likely seen on the surface when they're in distress or dying, they might be thrashing like a death roll or like a death thrash. And you think they're trying to attack you, you being the sailor. But really, it's just like, I'm dying over here. And you're like, well, let's go over there and cut its tentacle off. It's like insult to injury, man. I'm already dying. Like, what? Leave me alone.
You're like, if you were going to do that, just put me out of my misery. Why are you just taking my tentacle?
Hey, now it's going to start growing back while I'm in the middle of dying. It's exhausting. I was already in the middle of something. I got fucking interrupted.
Now I'm dying and regenerating at the same time, and I gotta pick a lane.
Yeah, this is not how it's supposed to happen. But no, that's a good point that at least they were not likely attacking at that point, but if they were seen on the surface. But the concept of there being something twice as long as what we know, like 40 to 60 feet is kind of the argument of what the largest Architeuthis dux has been, the giant squid. The idea of a 100-footer throws me off. And the only thing that makes me feel a little bit better is that Richard Ellis, who wrote the Encyclopedia of the Sea and several other books, was like, if it's something over even 80 feet, it would be unlikely to exist simply because of the massive food that it would need to stay alive that it makes it unlikely, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. And even he, the author of the Encyclopedia of the Sea, did not say it was impossible that there were things out there even more giant. I think that statistic of we've only cataloged about 500 over the past couple hundred years, 1,000 and some change years, that's what kind of makes me go, what's been down there? What's down there now and what was down there before we could even go look at it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and consulting back to my children's book, I see here that a school bus is around, a school bus is 45 feet, weighs 23,500 pounds. A giant squid is 33 feet and 900 pounds. So not nearly as heavy as a school bus, but that's because a school bus couldn't fucking float around and swim in the water. It can't be that dense, but it's almost as long as one. And they got beaks and school buses don't. They got beaks the size of our hands that can bite through our bones.
And they've got tentacles that can take you down. The school bus is just going to drive right past you. But no, that's the other thing too, is I think it makes you nervous. It makes me nervous. Something that's 40 feet long, that big, that has the ability to be so fast, to swim so fast, and to be able to reach so far. And it can swim so fast because it has all those pockets in it with ammonia that can keep it buoyant. But it's just eerie to think of something huge jetting at you that could chomp through you like a lion.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
That's a sea legend for me, yeah.
I think the Humboldt squid, of all the squids we've discussed, would be the most dangerous to encounter for me personally, because they travel together. The other ones are pretty loners because when you are that big, you got a lot to eat, like you said. So you can't like be sharing shit with people. But the smaller ones travel together. And something that's a little taller than me freaks me out so much more than like something that's huge. I don't know why, but it does.
Well, no, especially if it's something that you're gonna be face to face with. It's almost like, oh, I'm meant to fight. Not like, oh, I could probably go hide under a rock and this thing wants to go try to fight a whale. It doesn't want to fuck with me. Like it's gonna go, it has literal bigger fish to fry versus a Humboldt squid's like, what's up, motherfucker? You want to do this? You're like, no, I don't. And they're like, they call me Diablo Rojo. And it's like, I don't even have a cool nickname. I'm going to lose this fight. I'm going to lose this fight.
Are you like,
and I'm going to end up stinking.
Humboldt County, where Murder Mountain was filmed? It's like, bitch. I live right off the coast of Humboldt County.
Where do you think Humboldt squids come from? Fucking Murder Mountain. And that's what we're about to do. It's like, oh, God. But I do want to say, as the positive depiction of the Kraken, much like in this Ruby Gillman teenage Kraken and like kids shows and kids books. I love when something that does have a cryptid has a natural, proven counterpart, that it is anthropomorphized in a positive way, so that you have kids who grow up like Simon and Ella are like beautiful lovers of the earth, and they love animals and they love sea creatures, and they two different things. They want to make sure cryptids, but they, that the idea of like not depicting the Kraken as something horrible that you have to go get on a Navy ship and shoot it with a gun, but instead is like, oh, it's just trying to get enough food, and maybe if we do things bad on land and it hurts the ocean, then he's not going to get enough food, then he is going to come up to the surface and either, most likely just die thrashing about or attack someone, or, the Humboldt squids don't have enough to eat because of overfishing. And so now they're attacking people when they otherwise wouldn't. So I love the idea that we're taking what was a mystery of like, get out, it's coming right for us, we got to go kill it, and turning it into, what are we doing? Like that shark attack show I told you about on Nat Geo, where they're like, we're not going to blame the animal for the attack. We're going to ask, what control do we have as quote unquote the smarter species to help prevent this in the future? Like a shark attacked a person, not apropos of nothing. It is because of insert probably climate change related issue here. Yeah. So I like that your kids are growing up in a world where it's not like the Kraken is this monster and it has to have its head chopped off with a sword. It's like, it just wants to love itself and its family.
I do. I love when they take things like this and turn it into a teaching moment, especially for kids. Like, accept yourself for being different, or we don't have to fear things that we don't understand or know. Like, if we respect all creatures, then, then they'll hopefully respect us back, or they might drag you down to the bottom of the ocean. But
I'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
We got to do what we can control, like you said. And I'll just leave on this note. where to find the Kraken in case you were, I'm looking at the zones of the ocean. 2, 3, there's 5 of them. And the Kraken can be found in the midnight zone. So that's 3,301 to 13,000 feet. So that's a pretty big range, but we're probably not going to get down there. So all that to say, if you fear the Kraken, you don't have to, because you're probably not ever going to get down that deep to see one. And if one comes up to the surface, it's probably already struggling. So maybe you just do it a solid and say a little, hey, Betty, I hope you do okay, and turn around and go the other direction. Don't make it worse for it.
Let it say a little prayer for it. Let it have its final moments. But if it does come to the surface and it's like, meet me at midnight, you're like, okay, but they're down there. But yeah, unless you're in a submersible like Victor Vescovo, I think you're good to go and you won't run into the Kraken. It's very unlikely at least. But if you do, Sinisterhood podcast, go to sinisterhood.com/Freaky Friday and send your Kraken story.
Please, if you've ever seen what you even think might have been some kind of Kraken or sea creature, you got to send that story into us.
Please do. One of the stories in Richard Ellis's book, The Search for the Giant Squid, or it's linked in the show notes, but a Marine veteran had been on a large ship off the coast of, it's like near where the Puerto Rico trench is, which is one of the deep trenches that Victor Vescovo went in that show we watched. But he was up on the second or third deck, like not super high up, but high enough that he had like a nice view. And he said that a huge barracuda, like someone caught a huge barracuda off of one side of the boat. So everybody rushed to that side, and then he didn't rush with them. He just stayed with his buddy. And he's like, we turned and looked down, and it was like broad daylight. And he said that this huge squid, a giant squid around, he doesn't know what the species was. He just knows it was a squid around 60 feet was just laying kind of in the sand. He said it was about 50 feet of very clear water and then a sandy, like bottom, like floor right there. And he said they were anchored. Yeah, like a sandbar. And they were anchored. Their big like naval ship was anchored. And he's like, I was just standing up there and I looked at it and I felt like it looked me in the eye. He's like, I can't prove it, but I felt like it was mine. He's like, it must have been like 10 minutes. And him and his buddy were just standing there staring at it. And I guess whatever, it was 1991. So they didn't have like, a cell phone to whip out or a camera to whip out. He's like, we just stood there and stared at it. And then he goes, we thought, should we call the captain and tell him about this? But then it's like, what are you going to be like? There's a squid. It's like, okay, it's not doing anything.
Or they're like, kill it. And you're like, no, it's just chilling in the sandbar. It definitely looked at you and it saw all of you with its giant bowling ball sized eye.
Yeah, it knows your fucking secret. So if you've ever made eye contact with a squid, write us in because I want to know. So I want to know everything. I want to know your feelings.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, that's our 300. Thank you to everyone that has gotten us here. Thank you to my kids for the chaos that Tommy's going to have to clip together to make all that work. But for real, thank you to everybody. When we started this 6 years ago, who knew that the Kraken would be released on the 300th episode?
On the 300th episode, and we're recording it on what Facebook told me was our friendship anniversary. So what an appropriate time to have our 300th episode all these years later. Well, thank you for doing the show with me, and thank all of y'all for listening to the show with both of us, because this would not be, it would just be us in the backyard without anything.
True.
As it still is.
Yeah. Tommy and Paris would get real tired of hearing us just read our research to them weekly if we didn't have this as an outlet.
So thank you, and we hope it has brought you something over these past 300 episodes. And if you want to be part of the show, send in your Freaky Friday stories because I'm trying to hear those right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did we learn in the monster book?
We have Kraken, werewolf, things like it's called Godzilla.
What do you know about the Kraken?
The Kraken is larger than a school bus.
That's Whoa!
Right. And here it is.
You show it to me. Let me see. Oh, yeah.
Madness. Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Is that the Kraken?
No.
No, that's not. That, there he is. There he is.
Found him. Where does the Kraken live?
La monkey.
What else, Ella, do you know about Krakens?
If you cut off one of its tentacles, it grows it back.
Whoa.
Like a hide hydra.
Like a hydra.
A hydra.
Ooh, what's a hydra?
A hydra is a three-headed dragon.
Ah.
That's so many
There's
heads.
the Kraken. Simon, what's your favorite fact about the Kraken?
Elephant.
An elephant. Okay.
It has
Okay.
it's similar. Just gotta think. Do you want to see? I've got a little Kraken on my desk. Can you see my little
Look at
tiny
that.
Kraken?
Oh,
It's taking
got
over a
tiny
ship.
Kraken
We
like
have
that.
the exact same one.
You have the same one? I know. I got you a set of cryptids, and I bought one
Dude,
for
those
myself.
things are
So
I
we
got
have
it.
matching cryptids.
Okay, Simon's running to get our other Kraken real quick.
Oh,
He'll
okay,
be
good.
back in a second.
Visual aids from the Kraken.
Oh, Heather gave me this the other day.
Yeah, she's cute.
Yeah, what did I
Thought you
say?
might think so. I thought you might end up with that, Stuffy.
What else do you know about the Kraken?
He's huge.
He's huge.
Do you think the
Bigger than
Kraken
a
is?
school bus.
Do you think the Kraken is friendly or scary?
Friendly and scary.
Both.
Hard
He's
relate?
so friendly. It scares people.
What would you do if you were out on the high seas and you came upon a Kraken?
Like, is that a Kraken, matey?
I say, hello, Kraken. Please don't eat me.
Good
That's
question.
a nice way to open, yeah. What if he said, I just want to be friends?
Take my
That would
tentacle
be
and shake it.
That would be funny then.
Yeah.
So
You'd
fun.
make friends with him?
Mhm.
Yeah. What else did you learn about the Kraken that you found interesting when you were helping us research?
No one's ever seen them in real life.
Whoa.
It's true. It's true. They mostly just see them swimming away.
So do you think that means they don't exist?
No, they do exist.
They do exist?
Real.
But no one's ever seen one since 100 years back.
Oh, someone saw one 100 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
What'd
do
they
you
do when they saw it?
They cut off its arms.
They
did,
Yeah.
and it
They
swam
cut off
away.
a piece of its tentacle.
Where do you think the biggest Krakens live?
In the Pacific Ocean.
That's right. There's so many. There's so much
I've
in
been
the
in
Pacific
the
Ocean.
Pacific Ocean.
You touched the water of the Pacific Ocean?
Yeah. When we went to California.
Did
What
you
if
see
a-
a Kraken?
No.
A drop of water you touched also touched a Kraken. It had to have.
Whoa.
The ocean's so big.
Daddy, the jump and the dive, but the down and the cool.
You and Daddy went on a diving board and that was cool?
That's fun.
Yeah, that
good-
was cool.
You know what? Some things about podcasts, you just have an idea for a story, an anecdote you want to tell, and you just tell it. What happened on the diving board, buddy?
You never go on a diving board?
I've never been. Have you been on a water slide?
Yeah. He went on one when he wasn't actually supposed to.
Yeah, he took off for it.
Did
Sometimes
you go on
take
the
what
water
you
slide,
want.
Bubba?
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened when you went down it? Did you have fun?
Yeah. He went
Yeah.
on his belly. My nose.
You got a lot of water in your
Oof.
nose? Yeah.
I've been there.
That I said.
Okay. All right. Is this the sound a Kraken makes when it emerges from the
Yes.
depths?
Just
Hey, Simon, what would you do if you saw a Kraken?
Hello?
hi, babe. How are you? What's going on, kid?
Why not?
Why not? What? I
see the
ask myself
Kraken,
that every day,
and you just
buddy.
go,
why not?
You see that
Why
Kraken?
not?
You go, why not?
Kraken.
What would you say if you saw a Kraken
And the bottom of the ocean.
on the bottom of the ocean?
We jump on the road, then the water down the cool, then put our head and put our head in the water and see all the sea creatures in the ocean.
Get to
That
see
sounds
all the
great,
sea
bud.
creatures in the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Hey, do you know the show Teenage Kraken?
Mhm.
You like that show?
Tina Kraken.
What happens on Teenage Kraken?
I don't know.
You don't know? You've seen it a bunch.
Nemo.
Nemo,
Nemo.
he lives in the ocean.
Nemo. movie.
Nemo movie. Finding Nemo?
Finding Nemo.
Yeah. Was there a Kraken in that?
No, they're not the Kraken.
There wasn't a Kraken in that one. No. What about Teenage Kraken? What happens in the movie?
I don't know.
What happens in the movie Teenage Kraken, Ella?
She doesn't know she's a Kraken.
She doesn't know she's a Kraken?
Mm-hmm.
And then what
Wait.
happens?
She turns into a huge one with 3 legs.
Whoa, does she like being a Kraken?
No.
Like really giant Kraken.
Really turns into a giant Kraken?
I have one.
What if I'm a giant Kraken? How do you know?
Whoa, 10?
0.
Okay, are there any final things you'd like to say about the Kraken before we leave?
Wally.
Before you guys say your goodbyes?
Goodbye.
Wait, we got to get you to do a sign on. Can you say, I'm Ella and I'm Simon?
Yeah.
I'm Ella.
Can you say, and I'm Simon?
Hi, Simon.
Okay, there we
Yeah.
go. All right.
Aw.
I love you both so much. Thank you for your help.
Keep it creepy, kids. You're the best.
As always, the devil rules the airwaves and the Kraken rules the oceans.
That's right. The Kraken. Keep it creepy. Hi.
This episode of Sinisterhood is made possible with the help of our amazing patrons.
If you're interested in supporting the show, consider joining our Patreon. You'll get access to ad-free regular episodes, weekly bonus content. You're able to vote on episode topics, join our monthly live streams, and more.
Keep it creepy.
Mwah.